Welcome to our story today. Please find a comfortable place to sit and allow your mind to wander across centuries, across oceans, across the invisible threads that bind human civilization together. Today, we explore something so small that it fits in the corner of a page, yet so powerful that it moves nations, shapes empires, and governs destinies. We are speaking of symbols, not grand statues or towering monuments, but the quiet marks beside numbers that command trust, fear, ambition, and hope. The dollar sign and the pound sign are not mere decorations of commerce. They are compressed histories, silent witnesses to voyages, revolutions, trade routes, and the human hunger for value. In their curves and lines lie stories of merchants and monarchs, of ships heavy with silver, of scribes bending over parchment by candlelight. Long before coins bore engraved faces, and long before paper bills traveled from hand to hand, people searched for ways to represent value. Barter gave way to metal, and metal demanded measurement. Trade required clarity. As commerce expanded beyond villages into ports and across continents, writing became the bridge between promise and payment. Merchants needed marks that could be written quickly, recognized instantly, and trusted universally. From this need emerged abbreviations, and from abbreviations emerged symbols. What began as practical shorthand slowly transformed into powerful icons. A simple stroke of ink began to carry the weight of gold, the promise of labor, and the authority of governments. Consider the dollar sign, that elegant S pierced by one or two vertical lines. Its origin is often traced to the bustling trade of the Spanish Empire, when silver from the Americas flooded global markets. The Spanish peso, widely accepted across continents, was abbreviated in account books as PAS. Over time, hurried handwriting fused the letters together. The P faded, the S endured, and a vertical stroke remained like a memory of the lost letter. Thus, what started as ink-saving convenience evolved into one of the most recognized symbols on Earth. It was not born in a palace decree, but in the daily rhythm of trade, in the necessity of speed, in the hands of merchants who never imagined they were shaping visual history. The pound sign tells a different story, older and rooted in the soil of medieval Europe. Its origin lies in the Latin word libra, meaning a unit of weight. From this word came the abbreviation L, often written with a flourish to distinguish it from ordinary letters. As centuries passed, that flourish grew more elaborate, bending and curling until it became the symbol we recognize today. The sign carries within it the memory of scales, of measured silver, of markets beneath cathedral towers. It reflects a time when currency was not abstract but heavy, tangible, weighed carefully against fairness and fraud. In its curved spine lives the echo of Rome, the discipline of measurement, and the continuity of tradition. These symbols are visual contracts. They compress trust into ink. When we see them, we do not question their meaning. We respond almost instinctively. That instinct is not accidental. It is the product of centuries of repetition and reinforcement. Empires rose and fell, yet the marks endured. The British pound sign traveled with ships across oceans, stamped onto documents that shaped colonies. The dollar sign followed the growth of a young nation into a global power. In both cases, the symbol became larger than the metal or paper it represented. It became identity itself, shorthand for influence and economic force. Yet beneath their simplicity lies something profound. These symbols remind us that human civilization depends not only on resources but on shared belief. A currency symbol works because millions agree that it works. Its lines carry no intrinsic value, yet they unlock markets and determine fortunes. They are proof that collective imagination can shape reality. In a world often divided by language and borders, these small signs demonstrate the quiet strength of agreement. They show how design, necessity, and belief converge to create something enduring. And as we continue this journey, we will uncover how these modest strokes of ink became emblems of power, ambition, and the very architecture of the modern world. As trade routes expanded and empires stretched their ambitions across continents, currency symbols began to travel farther than the merchants who first sketched them. Ships carried silver across the Atlantic, caravans moved goods along ancient roads, and with every transaction the symbols gained familiarity. What began as regional shorthand slowly became global language. In busy ports from the Americas to Asia, the mark of the dollar appeared in ledgers beside barrels of sugar, tobacco, and spices. The pound sign marked contracts that bound distant colonies to a distant crown. These signs became companions to risk and reward, stamped onto receipts of fortune and failure. Each time ink met parchment, the world grew more interconnected. Yet history rarely unfolds in calm and steady lines. Beneath the surface of trade lay tension, ambition, and rivalry. The rise of one currency often signaled the decline of another. When the British Empire reached its height, the pound sign stood as a symbol of stability and authority. London became a financial heart, and the pound became a measure against which others were judged. But as the 19th century gave way to the 20th, storms gathered quietly. Wars reshaped borders, debts mounted, and power shifted westward. The dollar sign began to rise, not merely as a symbol of currency, but as a sign of a new era. Its presence in international agreements hinted at a transformation few fully understood at the time. In the middle of the 20th century, as nations rebuilt from devastation, the architecture of global finance was redesigned. Agreements forged in conference halls determined how currencies would relate to one another. The dollar emerged with extraordinary influence, backed by industrial strength and political stability. The symbol that once evolved from a scribbled abbreviation now stood at the center of international trade. It appeared in treaties, in loans, in rebuilding efforts. The world watched as the S with its steady line became shorthand for economic leadership. Quietly, almost invisibly, the symbol absorbed layers of meaning far beyond its original purpose. This shift was not without suspense or uncertainty. Economies trembled under inflation and crisis. Markets rose and fell with startling speed. The pound sign, once unchallenged, faced devaluation and reform. The dollar sign, though powerful, was tested by speculation and doubt. Financial panic revealed how fragile collective belief could be. A symbol only works if trust endures. When trust weakens, even the strongest emblem can falter. In those tense decades, currency symbols were no longer passive marks on paper. They became focal points of anxiety and hope. Investors stared at them on screens, governments defended them in policy, and ordinary citizens measured their security by their strength. Technology then transformed the story once more. The age of paper ledgers faded into the age of digital transactions. Currency symbols migrated from parchment to keyboards, from coins to glowing screens. The dollar sign became a command in programming languages, a sign embedded in global software. The pound sign, once rooted in Latin tradition, found new life as a symbol in telecommunications and computing. Their forms remained largely unchanged, yet their environments shifted dramatically. They no longer depended solely on ink and metal. They lived in code, traveling at the speed of light through invisible networks that span the planet. Through all these changes, the essence of the symbols endured. They continued to represent not only wealth, but aspiration. They appeared in headlines announcing triumph or crisis. They hovered beside prices in markets both humble and grand. And in every appearance, they reminded humanity of its shared dependence on systems of value. These symbols tell us that history is not written only in grand declarations and dramatic battles. It is also written in small marks that persist through transformation. As the world accelerated into modernity, the dollar and pound signs carried with them centuries of adaptation, resilience, and belief. Their journey from simple abbreviation to global emblem reveals how design and destiny intertwine, shaping the economic pulse of civilization itself. As the 20th century matured and the modern world settled into uneasy rhythms of growth and uncertainty, currency symbols became more than financial markers. They evolved into cultural icons. The dollar sign appeared in films, in advertisements, and in political cartoons, often exaggerated to represent ambition or greed. The pound sign stood firmly in newspapers and official documents, evoking heritage and continuity. These symbols no longer lived only in banks and markets. They entered the imagination. Artists painted them, critics questioned them, and dreamers pursued them. Their shapes began to carry emotional weight, representing not just value, but desire, status, and identity in an increasingly material age. At the heart of this transformation was a deeper philosophical shift. Money, once tangible and metallic, became increasingly abstract. Paper replaced silver, and later, digital entries replaced paper. Yet the symbols endured unchanged. This contrast is striking. While the substance of currency evolved dramatically, its visual shorthand remained constant. The dollar sign still bore its vertical line through the flowing S. The pound sign still carried the curved authority of its ancient origin. In a world where everything seemed to accelerate and transform, these symbols offered a sense of continuity. They reassured societies that beneath rapid change, certain structures persisted. But beneath that reassurance lay tension. Global markets connected nations more tightly than ever before, and crises in one region could ripple across oceans in moments. Economic downturns, sudden crashes, and financial scandals revealed how fragile prosperity could be. In those moments, the familiar currency symbols on screens and newspapers seemed almost ominous. The dollar sign beside a falling stock price felt different than when it stood beside growth. The pound sign announcing austerity measures carried a weight beyond its ink. Suspense gripped populations as they watched numbers fluctuate, wondering whether the symbols that once promised stability would instead herald uncertainty. The rise of new economic powers added further complexity. Emerging markets introduced their own currency symbols, asserting independence and ambition on the global stage. The world became a tapestry of signs, each representing a story of national aspiration. Yet the dollar and the pound retained a unique influence, shaped by centuries of trade and empire. Their endurance demonstrated that symbols, once deeply embedded in systems of trust, resist displacement. They are strengthened by repetition, by institutional backing, and by cultural familiarity. Even as alternatives emerged, these historic marks continued to command attention. Meanwhile, the digital revolution introduced a new chapter in the story of value. Online transactions reduced physical money to near invisibility. Cryptocurrency symbols appeared, challenging traditional systems with bold new designs. The familiar marks of dollar and pound now shared space with symbols born entirely in cyberspace. This created a subtle suspense. Would the old emblems fade into nostalgia, or would they adapt once more? History suggested adaptation. After all, both symbols had survived empires, wars, and technological revolutions. They had shifted from parchment to printing press, from coin to credit card. Their resilience hinted that their story was far from over. In reflecting upon this journey, we see that currency symbols are mirrors of civilization. They reveal how humans organize trust, distribute resources, and define success. Their persistence shows the power of shared agreement, while their evolution reflects human ingenuity. The lines and curves that once served as hurried abbreviations now stand as monuments to economic history. They remind us that even the smallest designs can accumulate immense meaning over time. As we move deeper into an age defined by data and innovation, these symbols continue to bridge past and present. They stand quietly beside every transaction, embodying centuries of belief, ambition, fear, and hope. Their story is not only about money, it is about humanity's ongoing effort to measure value in a world that is constantly changing. As we arrive at the final movement of this journey, we begin to see that currency symbols are more than historical artifacts. They are reflections of human consciousness itself. The dollar sign and the pound sign embody our enduring desire to measure, to exchange, and to build systems of meaning around material worth. They remind us that value is rarely inherent. It is assigned, reinforced, and protected by collective belief. Across centuries, societies have agreed to trust these symbols, to see in their shapes the promise of labor exchanged and dreams pursued. In their quiet presence, we find evidence that civilization rests not only on stone and steel, but on shared understanding. The elegance of these symbols lies in their simplicity. A single flowing curve, a steady vertical line, a careful stroke, nothing more. Yet, from such modest design emerges immense authority. This paradox invites reflection. Why do we respond so strongly to such minimal marks? The answer may lie in repetition and ritual. Every price tag, every receipt, every contract reinforces recognition. Over time, the symbols become embedded in memory. They begin to feel inevitable, as though they have always existed. But history teaches us otherwise. They were shaped by human hands, refined by usage, and strengthened by circumstance. Their permanence is not accidental. It is earned through centuries of relevance. In moments of prosperity, these symbols shine with optimism. They appear beside rising wages and expanding markets, suggesting opportunity and growth. In moments of crisis, they seem heavier, burdened by fear and uncertainty. We have seen economies falter, currencies fluctuate, and public confidence waver. Through each trial, the symbols remain visible, sometimes questioned but rarely abandoned. Their endurance demonstrates a powerful truth. Systems of value survive when communities choose to uphold them. Trust may tremble, yet it often rebuilds itself around familiar signs. The suspense that once surrounded their survival becomes part of their strength. As technology continues to reshape commerce, the future of currency symbols invites contemplation. Digital wallets replace leather ones, and transactions occur with invisible speed. Yet even in virtual spaces, the symbols persist. They appear on screens, embedded in code, signaling continuity amid transformation. This persistence suggests that while mediums change, the human need for recognizable anchors remains constant. We may design new currencies and invent innovative platforms, but we still rely on symbols to simplify complexity. They condense abstract economic systems into immediate visual understanding. Beyond economics, these symbols carry moral implications. They represent ambition, but they also provoke reflection on inequality and responsibility. The same sign that marks wealth can also highlight disparity. In this duality lies a philosophical lesson. Value, when concentrated without balance, can create division, yet when distributed with wisdom, it can build opportunity. The currency symbols do not dictate outcomes, they simply signify potential. How societies interpret and manage that potential determines whether prosperity becomes inclusive or exclusive. Thus, the symbols quietly challenge us to consider what kind of systems we wish to sustain. As our story concludes, we recognize that the dollar sign and the pound sign are living elements of history. They connect medieval markets to modern algorithms, handwritten ledgers to digital networks. Their lines trace a path through empire, trade, revolution, and reinvention. They remind us that even the smallest details of design can influence global narratives. In observing them, we glimpse humanity's ongoing quest to measure worth and to build structures of exchange that transcend language and geography. And perhaps the greatest lesson they offer is this: value is ultimately a reflection of belief, and belief, when shared, can shape the world. If you are benefiting from our topics, please subscribe, like, and turn on the bell notification so you can see our new videos early.